See. All right, there we go. So, all right, we're live, and we're starting the 20th week in Ordinary Time, 2014, and the readings. Like I figured, we don't always read the readings, but I figured this week uh, we could go ahead and like read the first reading and the Gospel, and maybe just summarize the second reading from Romans. And as I was looking at them, just like the general kind of theme seemed to be like, who are the people of God, beyond just the Israelites? Like, who are the people of God? And because I think all the readings kind of definitely all the readings address that question. So the first reading is from Isaiah 56. It's kind of short, and it goes like this: Thus says the Lord, observe what is right, do what is just, for my salvation is about to come, my justice about to be revealed. The foreigners who join themselves to the Lord, ministering to him, loving the name of the Lord, and becoming his servants, all who keep the Sabbath free from profanation and hold to my covenant. Them I will bring to my holy mountain and make joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be acceptable on my altar. For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples. That's the first. That's the first reading. Um, Definitely like this idea of like not just the Israelites, but everybody who comes and respects the Sabbath and just kind of has me in their heart. That's who I'm going to call my people. The second reading from Romans 11. I'm not going to read it because it's like really confusing language, and we can talk about it later if it comes up. But it's basically just concerning the salvation and mercy for Jews and Gentiles, and he's talking to the Romans who he hasn't seen yet, and he hasn't visited Rome yet. And so he's kind of introducing the whole idea of this new religion that's coming out, or this new way of doing things that's coming out. And he's basically saying, in this weird way, talking in circles like he tends to do, he's making the point that is also made specifically in 1 Timothy 2:4, that God desires everyone to be saved. And really that salvation depends on their heart, not their heritage necessarily, but their heart and how they act out of that faith. So, and we can go over that again, like I said, if we want to later. But the gospel is a really interesting gospel, I think. It's from Matthew. It continues from where we've been going the past few weeks. Matthew 15. At that time, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and behold, a Canaanite woman of that district came and called out, "Have pity on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But Jesus did not say a word in answer to her. Jesus' disciples came and asked him, "Send her away, for she keeps calling out after us." He said in reply, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But the woman came and did Jesus homage, saying, "Lord, help me." He said in reply, "It is not right to take the food of the children and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Please, Lord, for even the dogs eat the scraps that fall from the table of their masters." Then Jesus said to her in reply, "O woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And the woman's daughter was healed from that hour. So that's the gospel, and we'll start talking about it. But the questions, I always have these two questions that I kind of bring up in these talks, and the questions I had, first of all, concerning really concerning all three readings. The first question is, who do we treat as less, or who do we look down on? That's the first question. Who do we treat as less, or who do we look down on? And the second question I'll kind of introduce later, but it has to do with this change of mind that Jesus had, and how you guys see the change from Jesus ignoring the woman to Jesus calling her a dog, to Jesus being really kind of like impressed by her faith and totally acquiescing to her request, so to speak, and healing her daughter. So how do you guys see that?
That's a lot of questions.
Sorry, that is a lot of questions. How about first of all, let's actually start with the second question, because I'm just so, and I want to especially catch you while you're with us, Leanne, for the gospel. How do you see Jesus' change of attitude towards the woman in the gospel?
Well, I've always wondered about that one because I was like, did he really just call her a dog? I mean, did he really refer to someone as a dog? Or is it like so many other things within the Bible that are the wording is deceiving because it's not really what it appears to us, So I guess my question is, would Jesus call somebody a dog?
All right.
I
Okay.
think I think Jesus, and not only because he was God, but Jesus because he knew the Bible and he knew the Old Testament and he certainly knew the book of Isaiah, knew exactly that the salvation was to come to the whole world. And I think he used it as a teaching moment. But I think if he used any kind of language to that extent, like I haven't come to you, I've come only to my own people. Um, I think it was to pull out of her that faith, that declaration of faith that she had, the homage, the belief that this was the Son of God, that this was the person who could actually heal her daughter. Only in that way could his companions see that faith and possibly come to understand how Jesus was actually fulfilling the Old Testament. You know.
Yeah.
Isn't it a big part of Jewish ethos that they are the chosen people? And I think kind of especially since, in those times, in Jesus' times, bearing up under Roman rule and all the suffering that was going on, I think that, we are the chosen people was like a really big deal for them. I mean, I don't know because I wasn't there, but historically, this is what history tells us, right? That they had this kind of anthropological idea that it was them and that they were going to be okay and that God was going to protect them and God was going to kick the Romans out of their land and that the Messiah was actually going to be kind of this warlord who was going to rid the land of the Romans, right? And I get why kind of as Jesus dwelling in that moment in time, because he was also human and not just God, would know kind of the importance of saying, I'm here for the chosen people. And I think maybe changing his mind kind of extended the chosen people to more than just the Jews. Like maybe it's saying all people are the chosen people, like maybe it's kind of in the subtext. Instead of saying, so maybe he did, I mean, we know that the Bible is a flawed document and we know that it's, it was written years after Jesus' death, and the stories and what Jesus actually said is hard to, nail down exactly. So I'm not sure if he actually called someone a dog. But what I do think is that maybe it was about acknowledging kind of that idea, I'm here for the chosen people, I am here for the children of God, I'm here for this, and you know what? You are a woman of faith, and therefore you are a chosen person, and I include you. You want to be a chosen person, and God wants everyone to be saved, like from the book of Isaiah, and therefore I include you, may it be done as you will.
I think it's interesting, though. I think you can actually take it for the way that it is written, though. I mean, if you look at the way the church laid these three next to each other, they're all talking about the Jewish people, the chosen people, versus the world. And you see the difference between the Old Testament, where Jewish people are definitely, the chosen ones, and the only way to, enter the kingdom of heaven is through the covenant and through holding the covenant with God. And I think Jesus didn't necessarily change, might have not necessarily changed his mind with the woman. It might have just been him simply showing, it's a Canaanite woman. Him simply saying, everybody knows that God's chosen people are the ones who will enter the kingdom of heaven. He's saying as a fact. And I think he literally says, that metaphor because it's like relating. There's the children of God, and then there's those who aren't. And they're below anything else in God's eyes because God will choose his people and he will bring them into heaven. I think that maybe he meant it exactly how he said it because he knew that she would proclaim God. And in the end, it proves that it's not necessarily the old covenant that is going to be choosing the people of God, but rather the faith of people in Jesus and Jesus' salvation, bringing them in. I think that you can take it exactly how it is. It's him saying that there is a place for people in heaven, and we do receive food and sustenance from God by being the chosen people and by choosing Him. But it really required her saying, hey, I'm here for God. I'm with you. Even the dogs take scraps. I'll take anything I can get from you.
So Jesus, being the ultimate teacher, asks a question that makes the student give the answer he was hoping for.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it really seems like it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, right? It's because it's
I've got to go.
Oh, you got to go.
Yeah, I got to run.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Next week, I'll be in Kingsville.
Okay.
So if I can tune in, I'll do like this on my phone again next week.
Sure. All right. Well, whenever you're able to join us is awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye, Leanne.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Missing you.
I think it's really interesting because like it's just kind of debated thing, right? And I did a little bit of research because I was always confused by this. I was always very like as a kid or as a young adult, I would hear this reading and I'd be just really confused. Like why would God call her a dog, and why would Jesus not pay attention to her? And it was very confusing. And I remember hearing a priest saying kind of what you were saying, Sophie, like he was human too. And maybe, I mean, he posed the question, right? What if he really kind of didn't see his mission as expanding to everybody until that moment? What if he kind of saw himself as coming really just for the Jews, and then her faith kind of like, I mean, definitely, obviously as God as well, and as a human of deep prayer and ridiculous closeness, not even closeness, like oneness with God. He recognized that faith and was like, oh my gosh, if she can have that faith, then how can I deny her anything, I'm a big fan of that point of view. But that's my own meditation. And so I looked up I did a little bit of research on this, and it kind of varies. There's a couple people that say that. There's some people that make an argument for no, he wasn't doing that at all. He wasn't calling her a dog at all. It was a metaphor. He was using it as a teaching moment. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he was posing a question, kind of like what Mom was saying. He was posing a question so that the student could come with her own answer and teach the disciples something. And then someone was also saying, well, and they cited a lot of biblical references for this. They said in the Bible, in that time, in the Jewish culture, there was that idea of not dogs as like a bad thing, but this sense of like dogs as a pets. These wonderful things that people took care of and kids played with. And the practice was when there was food served, the kids would be served first, and then whatever they didn't eat would be given to their pets, these beloved pets, right? And so this person that was giving their take on this gospel was saying that he wasn't calling her a dog to demean her. He was calling her a dog to say, look, you're not technically one of like the chosen. You're not an Israelite. You're not Jewish, but you're this beloved, not like pet, but you're this beloved side character that is also in the house, and you'll get fed, but just after the Jews. So it's like a really interesting thing, and I'm not saying that's the take to have. But it's a really interesting thing because I think that's why it's so important for us to have our own kind of meditations on this. Like, what are we getting from it? Sophie said that obviously we can't know exactly what Jesus said. That's not the historicity of the Bible is not something that we're kind of like hold fast to as far as the order of his sayings, the preciseness of the wording. But it's the theological teaching that we get and the moral teaching that we get. So, with our own kind of meditations, we can kind of develop at various times in our life, what am I getting from this gospel?
I think you have to be kind of careful when you talk about, like, the chosen people, like, especially to people who are non-Christians. I know we're all Catholic or whatever, but it makes it sound like God predestined certain of us to go to heaven and the rest of us are just kind of screwed,
Right.
And
Yeah.
And I think it's actually saying the opposite, like, the chosen people are like those who choose to pick God,
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't get that, so I think it's kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind
Yeah,
of
definitely.
forgive my reference, but it's kind of like the wand chooses the wizard sort of situation, like Harry Potter.
You
That's
can
just
always
how I
reference
see it.
Harry Potter.
Like, like,
You just made Casey's day, by the way.
but it's like, the wand chooses the wizard. The person chooses God, and in so doing, God, who is always open to saving whoever and everybody, and hopefully every single soul on the face of the planet that has been and ever will be, chooses you back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of that's what I mean when I think of the chosen people, and I love that about Catholicism, that it's kind of doctrine that there is no like chosen group, and that the only salvation is not through being Catholic, and I like that, because I mean Catholicism is not for everyone, clearly, and there's people who will never experience it, and God loves everybody, so
Yeah.
Right. I think the idea of like whatever interpretation, whatever meditation we put on things that we read, are probably more an indication of where we're at in our lives, right? It's kind of how am I dealing with the things in my life, and how does that affect how I'm perceiving this body of work in front of me. And I was noticing today, as I was kind of thinking about the readings, I was thinking about the gospel. So what happens before this gospel, like, first of all, he's tired, right? Just kind of stepping back a little bit. He heard his cousin died. He tried to get some rest. He had to feed 5,000 people. He left that, tried to get some rest. Then it got really windy and blustery. He came back to the boat, and he had to save Peter from sinking into the water. And so continually he's trying to get this rest and this prayer in. So they go to this place, and right before this woman comes in, what happens is the elders, the Jewish elders, like, they're testing him again. They're asking, like, hey, why are you guys not obeying the laws? Why are you not washing your hands before you eat? And they were probably sincerely asking this, or they were trying to test him or whatever. And I was just thinking in my own kind of like thought about this. I'm just imagining, okay, Jesus is there, and he sees this woman who's not Jewish, and he's not technically supposed to be talking to her, and he's like, man, if they're getting on my back about not washing my hands before I eat, what are they going to say if I talk to this Canaanite woman? Like, what are they going to say? And I was just wondering, because it's not a sin to think that. It's not a sin to be like, oh my gosh, to feel a little scared. And while Jesus, I don't believe, ever sinned, I think it's an interesting thought that he might have had his doubts every now and then, like, shoot, man, they're going to skin me alive. They're going to skin me alive if they see me talking to this woman. And I think it's an interesting thought. And then the woman, proceeds to hound him and, to kind of pursue him. And he's like, and he might have been reminded, like, oh my gosh, you're right. You're totally right. That my mission is not just for the Jewish people. It's for everyone, especially for the people that pursue God. And how better to pursue God than just to keep going and going and going. But I don't know. That was my thought, too. I thought it was really interesting. The idea that he could have been scared. He could have been a little frightened, actually, at some moment.
I like that idea too. I hadn't thought about it actually, but that kind of fits in with a lot of thinking that I've been doing lately about the human Jesus and what exactly that means, and who he was as a human, because he was person and God, and so I think that at times there may have been kind of a struggle between his godness and his humanness. Not so much like an epic war or anything, like literary, drama, but I think that maybe he did have to bow to the social pressures, the rules of society. He had to obey them because he lived in society, And I mean, sometimes he didn't, and he got skewered for it, not washing his hands, or when they were picking the weed off the field, and as they were walking by to eat on the Sabbath, or whatever.
Right.
Different examples where we see that he is being told that he's supposed to live inside the society. It's interesting that you bring that up, because it kind of makes me think a little bit more about what rules did he have to adhere to. And I mean, he is kind of the rule breaker, right? He was sent back to make the new covenant and to bring the people to God in a new way. And how did he do that without, I mean, if you walk into a church today, for example, and like, okay, the changes that were made very recently to the Mass, as a good example, and they were all for the good, and everybody who read them and figured out, yeah, this is a good idea, um, but I still say the creed the wrong way sometimes, I think that,
Oh, yeah.
like, I think that Jesus was kind of, and that's a minor change. Jesus was trying to cause this huge change in the society that had been doing things the same way for so long. And, changing even the slightest rule must have been insurmountable seeming. So, I don't know, it's interesting. Thanks for bringing that up.
I think also, of course, Jesus was bringing around about change, but this is in the Gospel of Matthew. And
Mm-hmm.
Matthew was writing to the
Yeah.
church. So I was doing my homework in a study Bible, and it mentions that at the time that swine and dogs were actually used as derogatory ways of talking about the Gentiles. And there was a big backlash in the Jewish Christian community at the time of many Jewish Christian people who really felt that the gospel should not be taught to the Gentiles. This is not Paul. This is Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
And so that Matthew might have been using this language specifically to reach that part of the community. And I love that because it applies to us today. When we talk about the horrible Muslims, when they talk about the satanic Christians, whatever it is that we versus they mentality is, this is dealing with that. And I think that brings me to Paul talking in the Romans. The fact that they were also very dismayed that so many of the Jews themselves had rejected the Messiah comes out, but Romans is telling us, yes, but through that unfortunate accident, all the rest of the world is going to be saved. And it's just a reminder that all these things that we go through, and certainly the things that we're going through in our day-to-day, where there is so much violence and so much hatred and so much whatever, out of these things, there is, God is working, and God is bringing salvation to all, even not just those of us who seem to believe for whatever reason that we are the chosen people and others will not be. One of my friends just put out on Facebook a post saying, when does it stop? When does brother stop hating brother? Brother being all humans, right? How does Arab stop hating another Arab, or one Muslim stop hating another Muslim? And it just reminded me that if you look at these places that have been so lately suffering from violence, and I think it's true of violence in many places throughout history, you also find the human answer. You also find humans who reach out to each other in true brotherhood because of the suffering that they see in that quote-unquote enemy among those people who are suffering. So in the Holy Land, you have people like Pat Kane taking capacitar, which are healing technologies, healing techniques, not just to the Jews, not just to the Palestinians, but together to both of them and the Druze and whoever else will join them. And you see these efforts, you see in Mexico a resurgence of the faith, which had been crushed in many places by the government, and now you see a fervor that is new again. And the persecuted church has always become stronger through that persecution. So I think it all works towards the good, and it keeps us remembering that we are not the better people because we happen to be whatever we are, whether we're Catholics or whether we're the ones at church and our other Catholic neighbors or not. It doesn't matter. And I love to go back to the Old Testament because it keeps reminding me it wasn't just Jesus. Jesus didn't introduce this. It goes all the way back to at least Isaiah and I think Samuel and whoever else. God created us, and He created all of us. And God does not have favorites. He was working through the Jews, but He was working through the Jews to save everybody else. And they knew of Israel, that is our mission, always to save the rest of the world, not just our own.
Yeah, right, definitely. And it's just, you brought up the second reading, and it's interesting. Like the second reading, it goes from. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. it goes from 11 to 13 and cuts all the way to like 29 to 32, and there's this whole section in the middle. And that whole section in the middle, it's kind of weird that they took it out because the whole section is basically saying, by the way, you Gentiles, for those of you who are like might be kind of basically like for those of you who basically might be like kind of laughing at the Jews or yeah, it's about us, it's not about them. Like he's like shut it because as much as God's favoring you for the things you're doing, and as long as you keep doing those things and having that heart for God, He'll keep favoring you. Like you'll be on the side of good, you know. As much as He's favoring you, like He favors them so much more and wants them to be part of this whole thing so much more. So He's like, so you literally you don't have anything over them. You know, you happen to have gotten something right, but don't think that that makes you like their replacements or better than them or anything. So He's really kind of like telling them, just be careful how you think about the whole thing. Don't focus on them, focus on yourself, all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
I think the reason why they cut out the middle part is because they really wanted to draw a parallel between that reading and the Gospel of Matthew. I mean, especially, you know, where he says, for if their rejection is reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? Jesus was a Jew. And in his words, he rejects her, and then he accepts her. And he is the life from the dead. And I think that they wanted to really bring that focus in, the connection between the two readings.
Yeah, totally. I think so. I guess, and it's not so much necessarily for us to answer here, but I think we can kind of like walk away with, to whatever extent we want, walk away with that question. You know, who do we treat as less? You know, and who do we see as less? And really, I think the tendency for just us people in general is to be like, well, I don't see them as less, so I'm okay. I don't see, you know, the whole world sees these people as bad. I don't see them as bad. I'm cool with poor people. I'm cool with the people on the other side of the tracks. I'm cool, I'm cool with all these people that everybody else hates. But if we search deeper, then like, who are we actually not so cool with, you know? And I think that's probably a good thing for us to kind of think about, because I think that gets back to the question that you asked, Mom. How do we get away from this? How do we actually stop hating each other or stop fighting each other? And I think it really just comes down to like figuring out that beast in ourselves, you know, finding out where that lies within ourselves.
Right.
That's a hard question to answer. Who do I think less of? Because I like to think of myself as somebody who doesn't think less of other people.
Yeah.
And I've kind of been thinking about it since you first mentioned it while we were talking about other things, because I'm, like that, and my brain goes in different directions. But I think that there are a lot of people that I think less of and that I hate, and that's awful. But like, it's true. I genuinely, for 5 minutes, hate the guy that took too long to start up after the light turns green. And no, seriously. And I hate that lady who is smoking while she's pregnant. And I genuinely hate that mother in Walmart who lets her child run wild like a demon and take things off the shelves and put them on the floor. And so maybe this isn't like a specific person. Even though for a time I did have, kind of some weird opinions when I was a lot younger that I'm ashamed of. But now, I don't really think that I kind of hate a group of people, but I do have specific moments where I think of myself as better than this person, and I don't like you, whatever. I would never do that.
But isn't that actually just your dislike for what they're doing, not necessarily about them?
True, but I do kind of transfer it to that person. Like, if I see that person again in my life, I'm really good at recognizing faces and names. And if I saw them, I would know who they were, and I would be like, I don't like you. And that's
and that's good. I think that can be the point. That can be the point. For anybody who does kind of have a disposition against a group of people and finds themselves being kind of, maybe racist or bigoted or whatever, in a general kind of sense, I mean, it kind of definitely applies to that person, or when we do that too. I think we can definitely generalize, and we do. But I think sometimes also it's like that yeah, like you're saying, that 2 minutes where you're just like, like I'm from Texas, right? So we have that thing like, oh, New Mexico drivers, like when that person doesn't catch the light at the right time and we're late.
Well, some things are just facts, Nathan.
Yeah, but yeah, but I think that's the thing. I mean, no, that's a fun thing to have. But those things where whether we're talking generalizations, because it's not really popular to generalize anymore. It's popular to be PC, and I think a lot of us are kind of trained in not making generalizations and stereotypes and all that kind of thing. But we definitely have. I mean, it's a heart thing, right? We're the same people. We're still human. We have this kind of like heart that can at times, just throw that person on the bus and be like, forget you. You're ticking me off, and you're whatever makes you different. I think a lot of times it's an intelligence thing. Oh, you must be stupid. We're taking them down not necessarily for their ethnicity, but because of our own perceived idea of what their mental capability is that has nothing to do with reality. But I just think that's it. I think that's the kind of thing maybe for like that I want to be thinking about. Where am I doing that in my life? But I don't know. That's really all I got. Yeah, I guess we end it there. Let's go ahead and end it there, and we'll do our normal hey, how's it going chat. All right, so thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys next week for the 21st Sunday in Ordinary Time. That's such a long title, the 21st Sunday in Ordinary Time. Anyway, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.